This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 126, Time Management and Dealing with Those People. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is June 11th, 2015. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 126 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and also on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe, so you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. The month of June is all about time management here at Resonance, time management for content marketers, that is, and it's going to culminate in our next VIP webinar on June 24th, aptly named Content Marketer's Guide to Time Management. To grab your spot, go to resonancewebinar.com. Last week, we kicked off our time management month with some advice on how we content marketers can overcome procrastination. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. This month, we're continuing our focus on time management by talking about one of the biggest obstacles to managing our time effectively, dealing with those people. I think you know who I'm talking about. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. If you happen to be in the retail business and if Pinterest plays a key role in your marketing, this is the news that you have been waiting for. Pinterest has announced it will soon be rolling out buyable pins. This is going to be a brand new feature that will let users buy directly from Pinterest without having to click through to your website. The way it's going to work is users will know that it's a buyable pin because they will see a blue price tag. And they'll be able to see the item. They'll also be able to browse through, like if you are selling a sleeping bag and it's available in different colors, they'll be able to scroll through those different colors and check out all the options. And again, they'll be able to buy that item from right there in Pinterest. I believe they're going to be working with Apple Pay to work out payments, so you won't have to be, giving Pinterest any sensitive financial information. So very exciting for my retail folks. We're going to start seeing buyable pins here in the United States in a few weeks. And I know they're rolling it out to a select number of retailers, but at some point it will be no doubt available to all. So something to look forward to from Pinterest. Also, an interesting feature in the works over at Facebook. Facebook is experimenting with something called saved replies. Now, if you manage a Facebook page that gets a pretty robust level of traffic, you may notice that you get messages that represent the same types of inquiries over and over again. What payment methods do you accept? Where can I find job openings? I know my clients get a lot of those. And if you're like me, you wind up saying the same thing over and over again when you respond to these inquiries. What you do is you create an Evernote file of those canned responses that you can paste in when those general inquiries come up. Well, Facebook is experimenting with a feature that allows you to create saved responses within Facebook and paste them in from within Facebook. And apparently it's even going to be searchable. So, if you have 20 canned responses saved up and someone messages you about job opportunities, you can just search by job and pull up your response there. So really cool feature for managers of larger pages. Currently it's being tested with a fairly small group of users, of page users, but if all goes well, we can assume that will soon be available to all page admins. So something to look out for from Facebook. Okay, our content hit of the week is called 3 SEO Predictions You Need to Know for 2016. And this is by Huyen Trong. I hope I'm saying your name right, over on Jeff Bullis's blog. Now, this is a very, very good, very interesting post. And, as soon as I got done throwing up in my mouth a little bit when I heard we're thinking about 2016 already, I was like, oh my God, no. This year just got started. But it's true, we are coming up, believe it or not, in a few weeks we will be at the midpoint of 2015, and it's time to start thinking about the future. And this is actually a very good post for starting to do that. So Huyen gives us 3 predictions that we really need to start thinking about to make sure that we are keeping up with the demands of SEO as we start to, think about the new year. It's very insightful, very well researched, and I think his predictions the predictions shared here are right on the money. So I will provide the link in the blog post for this episode. Highly recommended. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please do shoot it on over to us so that we can share. And I'll give you that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, time management and dealing with those people. Today, of course, we're continuing our month-long series devoted to time management. Why time management? Because when I'm out and about talking to my fellow content marketers, the number one challenge that comes up in conversation is they say, Rachel, I just do not have enough time to get it all done, everything that is on my plate. So that's why I created this series, and of course it's going to culminate in our VIP webinar on the 24th. But I really want to focus on making the most of those hours that we do have available. The bad news is we only have 24 hours in a day, and unless you've figured out a way to crowbar in a couple of more hours, that's what we have to work with. But the good news is we can optimize the use of the time that we do have so that we can get everything done on our to-do lists without exhausting ourselves. So today, last week we talked about procrastination, which is a self-sabotage that can prevent us from working efficiently. Now today I want to talk about an external sabotage, which is having to deal with, quote, those people. And I know you know who I'm talking about. The drama kings, the drama queens, the emergency folks who just, they show up at your cubicle or they call you on the phone and they just have something that they have to have right this minute. And sure enough, when I talk to content marketers, they mention time as a challenge. When we dig a little deeper, they say they're constantly being interrupted. They'll say, Rachel, I plan my day and I sit down at 7:30 or 8 o'clock and I got my plan for the day and I'm busy all day and nothing gets done that was on my list. Another thing that I hear is that somebody's always at their door, at their cubicle, needing something urgent, et cetera, et cetera. And I find this is especially true for those of us who work in open environments. Back when people worked in offices, we could just close the door, and that's a pretty strong signal to, please do not disturb me. But now, we work in open environments. We are instantly accessible through phone, through email, through instant messaging, and we're just faced with a constant barrage of people who need things from us. So fortunately, there are some proven strategies for dealing with those interruptions and those interruptors and taking back control of your day. The first strategy that I advise you to try is keeping a log for a couple of days. If you're one of those folks who is just constantly being interrupted, your day never goes as planned, you never get done what you set out to get done, what I recommend is for 2 or 3 days, keep a log of your workday, of everything that occurs. Log every intentional action, like everything that you set to do, that you had set yourself to do, that you actually do, as well as every interruption, every urgent request, etc., etc. And your log might look something like this. 10 o'clock, sat down to work on blog post. 10:15, dug up last month's analytics because I received an email from the boss. 10:30, worked on blog post. And it does take a few minutes to jot all this stuff down, but once you are able to look at that list, especially if you do this for a few days in a row, you're going to get a lot of insights into the types of interruptions that occur and, certain times of day, certain people who tend to be your interrupters. So really look at those issues also that are the basis for those interruptions, and ask yourself, this person showed up at my desk asking for this, I gave it to them. Look back on that and say, was that really urgent? Was the U word ever used, or did they show up at my cubicle and by reflex I just did what they asked for and set them on their way? And look at those issues and think to yourself, is this an issue that I could have responded with something like, I'm really busy right now, but I promise to send you that by the end of the day? Could you have handled it that way rather than getting off track from what you were doing? So I recommend you take a couple of days and really jot down what happens over the course of a day, and then look at those lists, especially if you have a few days to look at, and really look at that and say, okay, what can I learn from this list? What are the patterns that I see emerging? Because, of course, being aware of the exact nature of the problem is the first step to solving it. So experiment with keeping a log for a couple of days. The second strategy is to limit phone and email access. What? What do you mean people can't reach me at a moment's notice? But believe it or not every phone call has to be answered, and not every email needs to be seen, read, and responded to immediately. And so for those times when you really need to focus, when you're working on your blog post, when you're working on your strategy, when you're working on your editorial calendar, things that you really need to focus on, do what I do. Shut down your email program. There's a quit button there on your email, believe it or not. Put away your smartphone. Even if it's on vibrate, just put it away. Set your desk phone to do not disturb. Unplug it if you have to. But really, just temporarily cut off those lines of communication so that you can focus. And I find that is tremendously helpful when I sit down to work on things like my blog post and my editorial calendar. So if you limit that access, that's really going to limit the opportunities that people have to interrupt you from what you're working on. Now, if they can't reach you via phone or via email, they can always show up at your door, and we can, and I'm going to talk about some of those strategies here in a minute, but limit phone and email access. And you can really, something that I've experimented with is set aside certain times of day that you're going to check email. You can say, okay, I'm only going to open my email at the top of every hour, and I will deal with what needs to be dealt with. I will file what needs to be filed, and then I'm going to turn that email program off until the next hour rolls around. That can be really effective because, your monkey mind is saying, oh my gosh, what kinds of emails are rolling in? So check it regularly, but don't leave it on all the time. That's a strategy that's worked really, really well for me. And the same with the phone. Leave your phone off and check your voicemails, maybe top of every hour. That could be your check-in time. That works very well also. Number 3, learn and use what I call the magic question. When someone calls needing something or shows up, there's a part of our brain that says, okay, because this person is asking this right now, I need to do this right now. And one thing that I've learned to do is to listen to the person, listen to what they need, and then ask them this question: do you need it right now? And, that question is it's so blunt and nicely blunt. You're not being mean here, but it really forces the person to think about whether this is really urgent or if it's just something that happened across their mind that they wanted to, get off their plate at that moment. And I would say about 85% of the time, in my experience, the answer is no. I don't need it right this second. And that's, of course, your cue to say, okay, great, happy to help you with that. I'm working on something right now. I might even say I'm working on a deadline. Even if it's a deadline that I've set for myself, I might say, I'm working on a deadline. I promise I will get it to you by the end of the day, or I will have it to you by tomorrow morning, or set a time when you will have that to them. And for a lot of people, that will put them at ease because they know they're going to get it. You're not just saying, oh, when, I can get around to it right now, I'll get to it later. That leaves a lot of discomfort because it's, okay, when's later? Next week, next month. But if you put a time on it when you're going to be able to accommodate their request, that tends to satisfy them, and they will, honor that and trust you to be true to your word. Now, of course, you have to deliver on those promises once you make them. So make sure that you're building in time by the end of the day to accommodate those requests. A strategy number 4 that has worked very well also is to set office hours. You remember in college when our professors had office hours, and that was the professor would definitely be in his or her office, the door would be open, and you were free to wander in and talk about whatever, whether it's, subject matter or your next paper or arguing about the grade on your last test. They were open and available during those times, and you knew for a fact that you could get access to them during those times. Now, there might be someone in line ahead of you, so you might have to wait a little while, but you had access to those professors at those times. Well, we can do that as well. Create office hours, post them outside your cubicle or at your space, and just let people know that my schedule is extremely packed, but I want to make sure that I make time for people to have access to me. So, between the hours of, 10:30 and 11:30 every day, I will be here, I will be accessible for whatever you need. And let people know that, that they can get to you and talk to you during those times and bring those requests to you during those times. And then from your standpoint, when those office hours roll around, you can schedule low focus tasks for that time. Maybe it's, it's doing research on a particular project or something that just doesn't involve a whole lot of concentration, knowing that during those office hours, people are going to be popping up and requesting your time. So think about setting office hours when people can have access to you. And finally, number 5, if you must be interrupted, get back on track immediately. Far too often, we're working away on something, we get interrupted, and that leads us down a rabbit hole, right? And before we know it, the rest of the day has passed and we've gotten nothing done that we set out to do. So if you are faced with an interruption, if you ask the magic question, do you need it right now? And the answer is yes, and the matter is truly urgent, decide what needs to be done, do it, and then get back to the task at hand. Don't let people drag you into their drama around what it is that they're asking. Give them what they need and get back to what you're working on. And if you're not conscious about doing that, like I said, it is far too easy to get sucked down those rabbit holes, get pulled into the drama, get pulled into meetings that have absolutely nothing to do with you, etc., etc. So if you must be interrupted, make a promise to yourself that you will get back on track immediately. Okay, so those are my 5 strategies for dealing with those people at work. If you have any questions, or if you want to add to the conversation, or if you have your own strategies that you want to share with us, I would love to hear from you, and I will give that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. Today I want to share a strategy for making sure that you have time to work on those tasks that require your undivided attention for a block of time, such as writing your weekly blog post or writing another piece of content or working on your strategy for the next quarter. It never fails. We'll start working on something. We really need to focus, and then we're faced with interruption after interruption. We get a last-minute meeting invite, etc., etc. I find one thing that helps me is actually scheduling those blocks on your calendar. Not just have it on your to-do list to write the blog post, but actually schedule in, between 10:30 and 12 o'clock, I'm going to work on this blog post, or I'm going to do 5 chapters of this white paper, whatever it is that you really need to focus on. For one thing, when people try to schedule time with you, they're going to see on your calendar that you are busy during that time, and you have a meeting with yourself to work on this, but you're also You also make a commitment to yourself to focus on that time, during that time slot, on this particular item. You're going to work much more efficiently, and the overall quality will be higher than if you had just treated it as a to-do item. So for those things that really require a lot of time and your undivided attention, get those items on your calendar and off of your to-do list. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. I have enjoyed our time together, as always. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it, and I want to thank everyone who has left us reviews so far. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. I also invite you to check out our monthly webinar series on the fourth Wednesday of the month. The next is the Content Marketer's Guide to Time Management, and it's scheduled for June 24th. To grab your spot, go to resonancewebinar.com. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Langston Hughes. He once said, quote, "Like a welcome summer rain, humor may suddenly cleanse and cool the earth, the air, and you," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.